Nevada Public Radio. I'm Joe Shane. I'm in the state of Nevada. Cold weather's here. There are a lot of holidays. People are eager to give each other gifts. Some people will get a pet, and a lot goes into that, especially in this colder weather. The issues that impact people, like flu, pneumonia, arthritis, and more, also impact our pets. And is considering or giving a pet as a gift, is that even a good idea? Lori Heron is the executive director of Nevada Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Lori, welcome back.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. So, Lori, during the holidays, people want to give, and sometimes it is a pet. What's the Nevada SPCA's stance on doing that?
Well, Joe, our recommendation is the same that we recommend throughout the year. If anything, you need to underscore it during the holidays that getting a new pet is an emotional experience, but we really encourage people to think past that experience and consider the responsibility and commitment that a pet includes, depending on the species and the age and the breed. I mean, you're looking at possibly 10 to 15 years of having that pet as part of your family. And there's a transition, especially if you're having a younger pet like a puppy, where you need to train it, and there's a lot of work and time and patience. So we recommend that, and our adoption team talks about the adopters with all of these issues, that you consider what that pet is really going to require from your family beyond that initial emotional decision. We also recommend that during the holidays may not be an ideal time to bring a pet home. Pets are looking for routine and structure, and many of us don't have that during the holidays. We're traveling, we have a lot of guests at our home, so it may not be ideal to bring a new pet home. And finally, there's a lot of other dangers of the holidays that are not good for animals. If you have an animal that's going to get into your Christmas tree or with tinsel and glass decorations, that can be dangerous, as well as some of the holiday goodies like chocolate and raisins that are not good for pets. So there are a lot of things to consider. And I'll say finally, the gifting part of it, we have a lot of people that want to get a gift for their children. And our recommendation is, if you're going to get a pet for a child, just consider taking care of that pet yourself, unless you have really responsible children, and mine certainly were not. As an adult, you need to plan on taking care of that animal yourself. And if you're wanting to surprise somebody with a pet for the holidays, make sure that person really wants that pet, and it's not just your idea. Because again, a pet is an amazing, but a real commitment and responsibility. And Nevada SPCA recommends that you consider all of those things before you make that emotional decision to surprise someone with a pet this Christmas.
Obviously, you're speaking from experience. During Christmas and the other holidays, does interest in shelters go up? Do you see a lot more people?
Yes, certainly there are people that are interested in that puppy for Christmas, for example. But I'll tell you that our Nevada SPCA's largest challenge during the holidays, and it will be even more exponential than this entire year has been, the number of people that are giving up their pets. 75% of our intake are owner-surrendered animals, and the economic crisis has created more of that this year for Nevada SPCA and other rescues in the community. Additionally, when people are traveling, sadly, we find people that don't have the resources for boarding or don't have the commitment to continue to take care of that pet. So we're waiting for the wave to come for the holidays of people wanting to give up their pets. It's just a sad reality in our community.
Some cities, and I was just reading this online this morning, around the world ban the adoption of pets because of that issue, because of the return of those pets to the shelters.
Interesting. We continue to take in as many animals as we can. We're not an enforcement organization, and we want to continue to be a safety net for all of the pets in the community. You know, we certainly don't agree sometimes with the reasons that people are giving up their pets, but it's not our place to judge. Again, we want to be a safety net for animals so they won't get dumped. There are already a number of animals being dumped in our community, even though it's illegal. Our employees, unfortunately, have come in many mornings where there's a dog tied outside, other cats and other animals left in carriers, and we want to reduce that because, again, our concern is for the pet.
About how many pets right now or animals are at the SPCA?
So our capacity with our foster program generally is in excess of 200 animals in any day. We will intake and adopt out over 2,500 animals in a year. So we are limited in our capacity, even though we have a new shelter that we moved into last October. So our goal, of course, is always to get the animals into loving new homes as quickly as possible through our marketing strategy and for events like this Saturday is our Home for the Holidays, sponsored by our friends at Finley Toyota, where we are waiving all the adoption fees for animals, our pets ages 6 months and up at the shelter. And of course, Santa will be there for free pet photos and hot cocoa and all the wonderful holiday things. And then you can talk to our fabulous adoption team about if that pet is a good fit for your family.
Yeah. Let's say everything fits and it all works. How much does it cost to adopt typically?
So we keep our adoption fees very low. We practice the best practices for adoptions and sheltering, and we try not to create any barriers as long as the home is a loving new home and a good fit for the adopter. So our average adoption fee is about $80, $65 for adults, adult cats and dogs. Puppies and kittens are more. I mean, we do practice a little supply and demand because people are interested in younger pets. And we also have small pets that are very inexpensive. I mean, you can adopt a rabbit or a guinea pig for as little as $10.
You know, last week the Clark County Commission voted to ban the sale of dogs, cats, rabbits, pot-bellied pigs at pet stores, and it doesn't go into effect until next year. But I wonder if you're expecting a big change at your shelter now because of that.
So Nevada SPCA, myself personally, spoke on behalf of that ordinance last week, and we told stories of the puppies that were returned to our shelter with a receipt in tow. And there's a lot of them. Amazing that people will spend thousands of dollars, receipts of $3,000 and $4,000, and return a puppy after only 6 months or a year because the puppy is, and I quote, hyperactive, or I quote again, we wanted a calmer dog. Last year I tell a story of a beautiful Bernie doodle, a cross between a Bernese Mountain Dog and a poodle that was returned at Christmas time that cost $4,500, a beautiful 4-month-old dog. And the family's response to us was they just weren't ready for a puppy. So we see a lot of those stories. And again, our adoption team will vet those adopters so that we make sure that they're ready for a puppy. But additionally, there's issues with the puppy stores, pet stores, that those animals are going out into the community without being spayed and neutered and without microchipping. And there's such a pet overpopulation right now in Southern Nevada that we need to stop breeding more animals. And then secondly, we need to be able to stop the stray dogs in the streets and the crisis that we experienced earlier in the year when there were so many dogs that need without identification, dogs and other pets, that the microchipping and IDing is so important to keep our pets safe in our community.
And if you're just joining us, Lori Heron is the executive director of the Nevada SPCA. And this is the time of the year when animal shelters will see an increase in adoptions. The SPCA is going to have an event this weekend and where they're going to try to fit potential adoptees with pets. Some cities don't even allow adoptions during the holidays because they say the pets are often returned or abandoned after the holidays are over. Joining us now is Dr. Shadi Ireifej. He's a veterinarian and the founder of VetTriage.com. Also with us, Zachary Adam Dickmeyer of Club K9. Dr. Shadi, Zachary, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Good morning.
And you know what? I'm just going to get into some of these emails. We've already gotten so many questions from people. Let's get into this. Tiffany writes, I have a poinsettia plant and my cat loves to bat and play with it. I did some research and saw that these plants are dangerous for pets to consume. Why? What will happen?
So most pets, when they are ingesting plants, they're usually doing it either out of extreme boredom or starvation, which thankfully is an uncommon scenario. When you're looking at plant toxicities in general, it depends on what kind of plant they're being exposed to and what species are doing the ingestion. So poinsettias, for example, can cause a variety of symptoms, sometimes cardiovascular, which can be quite severe, sometimes gastrointestinal, which could be anything from mild to severe. So it all depends on the dosage, the amount they've ingested, as well as the breed themselves. Thankfully, most cats tend to just play with plants and not actually ingest them unless there's an actual issue with them or they're extremely bored.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And Tiffany, I hope that helped you. Sonia writes, why are cats obsessed with Christmas trees? And she wrote an exclamation point here. I've gone through 2 trees in the last 3 years because my 2 cats try to hide inside of it. Is there anything I can do to make them stop? Zachary.
The kittens are a little bit outside my wheelhouse. Dogs are definitely a little more up our tree here when it comes to the training aspect of them. Yep, yeah. So to speak. So, hard to say for me in particular when it comes to cats, just like dogs, I'm sure something new in the home over the holidays is going to express some interest in environmental change, is a little bit of a factor there.
Dr. Ireifej?
I will say there's probably an evolutionarily explained reason for why cats enjoy this stuff. You think about small cats or domesticated felines, they're at home, they're not doing any hunting. The big cats, lions, tigers, they're in the savannas, they're in the grass, shielded away looking for prey. And so evolutionarily speaking, these cats are going to find enclosures like plants interesting. They are doing it out of curiosity to some degree, but I think there's also a biological / evolutionarily explained reason why they are fascinated by being covered in vegetation.
From Tom in Centennial, who says, I have 2 Dobermans that are outside dogs. We just moved to Vegas from Southern California, where it's normally very warm. Yesterday, it was 34 degrees outside. Is that too cold? At what temperature should I bring them in? They are so big, we try to keep them outside most of the time.
That's a difficult one because it does depend on the individual dog as well as what breeds. Dobermans, for example, we know they're very light-haired dogs. They're not really meant for that type of weather. So whether or not there's an actual limit to how cold, I'm not sure, but issues like hypothermia and frostbite are real dangers. And so my advice would be to, for those dogs that are lightly haired, you're going to want to make sure they are in warm environments, especially when it is cold outside. Make sure they're only outside for reasons of elimination, so urination and defecation. And if they are going to be outside for a certain amount of time and you're not sure about whether or not they can handle that kind of temperature, then doggy sweaters, clothing, booties, these things can help minimize the risks of hypothermia and frostbite.
Oh, so those sweaters, the booties, that's not just like cute affectations that people give to their pets to make them look cool?
They can certainly provide a function as well.
And Dr. Shadi, what are some of the illnesses, I talked about this in the introduction, that pets can get during the colder weather, during the flu season?
So besides what I mentioned with hypothermia and frostbite, those are environmentally related conditions. A lot of times during the seasons, especially the colder weather, just like people, your immune system can be hit by it. So you're not going to be as strong in your immune defense to ward away diseases, especially communicable diseases, so ones that are transmitted from one individual to another. So canine viruses, for example, can travel miles, and your dog, besides protecting them with vaccinations, you need to make sure they are up to speed with their overall health care. So cold weather can suppress the immune system, making them more vulnerable to communicable diseases such as viral infections.
Personally, I love cats, but I'm very allergic to them. I had one for years, though, and I would give it baths, and then I would try to blow dry it afterward. As a way, it was terrifying, and man, that cat hated it. But it kept my red eyes at bay and the allergies away for years. But beyond getting shots, what else can I do to fight allergies?
For people, as you as a pet owner?
Yeah, me.
Hairless cats, we do think that a lot of the allergies come from the dandruff and what have you that they're exfoliating from their skin. So then
you pet their skin.
So you can pet their skin. Whether or not that's your style is up to you, but that is one option. Second option is don't adopt cats. You have that as well as plenty of other pets that you can consider. Otherwise, it's talking to your own physician to see, medically speaking, what else you can do to try and curb your own allergies if you really want to have that pet that you're allergic to.
Is there some kind of thing you can put on them, like when you're brushing them, or is there some kind of, God forbid, chemical or something you put on them that doesn't hurt them?
Not that I know of. I will say, if we're trying to advocate for healthy coats, something that's completely underrated is fish oil supplements. So your fish oil supplements are really good for your dog and cat's health, not just skin, but also joints and intestinal tract.
And Vanya from Las Vegas, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you.
You're welcome. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I have a dog that I got from the Animal Foundation 2 years ago. He's 5 years old. His name is Rusty. And he is such a good dog. He's never chewed anything or, done anything crazy, but he does get very anxious, especially on car rides. It doesn't matter if, I'm just taking him a mile to the park in the car, or if we are driving to Red Rock for 30 minutes, he'll cry the whole way. he gets very, very antsy, and we've tried giving him calming treats and stuff, but it doesn't seem to make a difference.
Okay. Zachary, any suggestions?
Yeah, car rides can be a little bit unusual for dogs, the momentum that's transpiring in the new environment. So trying to make it not about the car ride can be super beneficial. You know, if you have the opportunity at home on a daily basis to get your dog out into your vehicle in your driveway when the car's not even running, get them on maybe a down so they can be a little bit more comfortable in the vehicle to build on some success there. And then slowly over time, start to get it to where you can repeat that exercise, but maybe by starting the vehicle, starting to drive around your neighborhood with your significant other in the car that can help keep the dog on a down command. So they're not becoming overstimulated and hyper-focusing on something that might be triggering them. So just take it slow and build on some success there by trying not to actually complete this exercise when you're trying to drive and get somewhere for your pet's safety and for your own.
Dr. Shadi?
Yeah, and I would echo that remark. Behavioral and environmental modification would be the ideal scenario, so you can sort of fix things, quote unquote, naturally. In the scenarios where you're finding it's not working for you for whatever reason, then of course I don't want to underestimate the importance of pharmaceutical intervention. Less ideal, but talking to your veterinarian about actual medications to try and help curb anxiety would be your plan B. Should plan A not be successful?
Are you talking about, she mentioned some kind of treats, like calming treats. Are we talking about like basically Benadryl-laced cookies?
You can go with something as simple as over-the-counter products. So treats, Benadryl is actually a very common one, all the way to actually strong sedatives that require prescription, all the way to medications like Prozac that are behavior-modifying agents. So it can be as simple and over-the-counter or as intense and prescription-based as you need.
Got an email from Michelle in Las Vegas who says, my dog loves to pick up rocks and bring them over to us. I'm terrified she's going to accidentally swallow one. So can you train a dog to stop doing that? And what happens if my dog does swallow or eat rocks? And first, for the training part, Zachary.
Yeah, constant supervision is going to be key. Anytime we have an animal that's showing extreme interest in something that we obviously don't want them to have extreme interest in, whether that's rocks or belongings inside your home, getting them desensitized to those objects can be extremely important for their health and safety. So taking the opportunity to get those rocks, those shoes, whatever it is you find unbeneficial for your dog to be showing interest in around them as often as possible, but with constant supervision so that you as a responsible dog owner are able to communicate, hey, this is an item that is unsafe for you to be playing with or digest is extremely beneficial. And when they are able to redirect their attention, you can practice name recall, practice a little bit of sits and downs around these objects to see if you can get them to redirect and to focus on you can be extremely beneficial as well, and how we start to curb some of those behaviors.
Give me an example. So my dog keeps coming with rocks. How do I redirect it?
So redirecting it through the obedience, right? A lot of dogs are missing some stimulation, right? A lot of folks are missing the connection with their dog when it comes to obedience. These dogs love to please their owners and love to be told what to do because of the bond that it does create. So if we can teach the dog to be obedient away from this object, if they're hyper-focusing on the rocks, hyper-focusing on your shoes in the house, we temporarily need to remove those objects to see if we as owners are responsible enough to gain control of the dog's obedience in a controlled environment. And if we are able to do so, we want to reintegrate those items or objects back into play and still maintain that level of obedience. And that's how we can start to make sure that the dog is not being overstimulated, that the emotional side of the brain is not taking over, and their logical side of the brain is willing to respond to the commands that we're giving as dog owners.
And Dr. Shadi, if a dog does happen to swallow a rock, is that a bad thing? Does it just pass through?
There's two scenarios when you have dogs that are interested in rocks. Number one is dentition. So after many years of doing this, it will cause severe wear and tear in their teeth. I've seen dogs over the years that chronically will chew on rocks or baseballs or tennis balls where literally the space between their teeth are outlined by the shape of rocks. It's that much wear and tear. But secondarily, if they ingest the rock and the rock is not small enough to pass on its own, you're looking at a gastrointestinal obstruction, which frequently ends up resulting in an emergency procedure, either endoscopy to remove it or unfortunately, most often surgery to remove the rock.
I wonder if this question is related to that. This is an email from Justin in Summerlin who says, my little Sophia is a 7-year-old Shih Tzu Poodle mix. When I rub her belly, internally I feel these hard bumps. They kind of feel like cartilage because they move, but I wonder if she needs to see a vet.
These lumps are on the belly themselves. So there's a couple of scenarios there. Number one, if Sophia was spayed, some veterinarians, especially more old school veterinarians, may have used suture for the spay that are permanent. It won't hurt your pet. It's just more of a cosmetic thing, but you can feel it under the skin, and it'll seem to move as well because those sutures are in the muscles. So that's the most common reason why I'll see bumps on the in the belly and are not causing any problems. Secondarily, you want to look at two different reasons, broadly speaking. One is skin issues. So maybe there's some kind of skin abnormality that requires veterinarian assessment and testing to see. And then the other category would be something more internal, so muscle or deeper below. It would be very odd to have something actually internally cause this problem because you wouldn't be able to feel that externally on an exam or when you're petting Sophia's belly. So I would look at either, could that be where the sutures were from the previous spay? Otherwise, looking at some sort of dermatologic anomaly and less likely internal.
We got an email from Leslie who says, I've heard varying opinions on whether or not dogs in Las Vegas need the heartworm medication. Do Las Vegas dogs need this?
So the answer is going to be yes, I'm going to say, because we are seeing a transition over time, probably related to climate change, where we're seeing more and more of these parasitic diseases that were specific to certain areas of the country. Now they're showing up in less common areas. So heartworm disease, which is a disease transmitted by mosquitoes, and the large number of possible tick diseases, we're seeing a lot more now in Nevada because of climate alterations. I suspect. Tria from Henderson writes, I want to get my son a bird, a parakeet, for Christmas. I've heard they are companion animals. I'm not sure that we can handle two of these birds. So will we need two, or will it be okay alone? This is a behavioral question. Anybody got any suggestions?
Birds I've seen do often individually as well. I mean, they do great as pairs. I've personally had some in the past, and they definitely thrive, together. But I've had some do quite well independently as well.
Yeah, and Lori Heron.
So unfortunately, birds are not one of the species that we adopt at Nevada SPCA. However, we have a number of resources. If you wanted to contact us, we interact with a number of other rescues throughout the community, and there are bird rescues that are experts that can talk to you about adopting a bird and all of the different behaviors with it. So while we don't offer them as a pet for you, we can certainly assist you if you have any questions.
And Dr. Shadi.
Yeah, and budgies do make remarkable pets. I've had many clients over the years that absolutely love these birds for pets. And I would say, just like any other pet, they have different individual personalities, right? So you may read about parakeets being independent or not, but you really should first test it out under strict supervision, whether or not, if you're going to introduce a second bird, do they actually get along? And then from there, make a decision as far as whether they can cohabitate.
Here's another behavioral question. Marco writes, I have a chow, cute as a button, always gets along with our big galoot of a black lab. They're best buddies, but on Christmas last year, as we opened presents, the chow sat in the middle of the mayhem, and when the lab approached, he growled, bared his teeth, very threatening, and the lab immediately stopped, sat down, didn't move a muscle. What was that all about?
Hard to say 100% definitively, but in an environment like that, we have to take in consideration what's new, what's transpiring, what stress is possibly triggering the dog, and what is going on. I love to have my animals involved in situations like that. They're members of the family. I teach my dog a simple place command, in an environment like this, where they can be there right in the middle amongst all the opening of the presents and getting involved with the family. But we have enough separation to where it's not possibly overstimulating for them. With the children or family members potentially opening gifts, another dog walking into the environment, even though it was a sibling. For some reason, we saw a trigger in that exact environment. Chows are naturally a little bit of a protective breed. Even though this is a sibling they've naturally got along with, it's normal for them to display behaviors like that, unfortunately. Doesn't mean that we as owners have to find it acceptable, but it is something we do see.
And Dr. Shadi? Yeah,
don't forget, dogs have to communicate with each other, right? They're not going to verbalize the way we verbalize as human beings. And so whether they are showing it in their teeth, wagging their tail, their ear positions, those types of postures and actions are vital for their communication, and they live together, so they're going to communicate. If one dog is doing something the other dog doesn't like, despite being best friends and playing together nicely for most of the time, they have to communicate that, and it's okay if they are going to disagree once in a while.
Vicky from Las Vegas, welcome to the program.
My question is, I have a 7-year-old Chihuahua that we inherited, and he has been marking the house ever since, and there's nothing I have been able to do thus far to stop that. Now, with puppies, you take them out every 2 hours. What do you do with a 7-year-old?
Unfortunately, when it comes to some older dogs that are new to your house, obviously they are trying to, like you said, a little bit mark their territory. And these dogs need some structure, right? A new dog to you is not necessarily a new dog like a young puppy. We are trying to establish a routine and schedule and build some trust. But even though this is a little bit older dog, you need to treat it like a puppy. Yes, routines and schedules are extremely important and beneficial, but we're also dealing with a little bit of behavioral issues here to where the dog is wanting to mark, to, like you've mentioned, mark its territory. And so constant supervision is going to be extremely important and key in these types of situations, so that when the dog does want to mark, you as an owner are able to communicate that's something you were not interested in or looking for, and able to communicate what you were looking for and be able to get them outside in their designated relief area, if it is going to be outdoors or a pee pad, to show them where it is acceptable in your home, because you're going to be taking the time to establish some new rules and boundaries.
And Dr. Shadi.
From the medical standpoint, we have to look into possible medical conditions if the behavioral modification doesn't work. So, for example, is he an intact male? Does he need to be neutered? Now, if you neuter a dog who's had testosterone in his life for 7+ years, it may be possible that behavior is pretty much set in stone. But if he's not neutered, and that's a fairly simple routine surgical procedure and good for many reasons, neuter him and see if in the next few weeks to a couple of months, those testosterone levels lower to the point where now behavior modification will be even more successful. But let's not rule out other conditions too, bladder issues, prostatic issues. These are diseases that male dogs can get that can also contribute to this type of behavior.
We also got a question from Tom. Another Tom says there was a case out of Nye County recently where officials took more than 270 dogs from an animal abuse case. I'm wondering what it takes for shelters to come up with a game plan when that many dogs are involved that need immediate care and shelter. Lori Heron.
So unfortunately, we're really familiar with that case. Nevada SPCA's veterinary team was asked and volunteered to assist on site. When those cases are at that level, we, again, are not an enforcement agency. However, we're going to advise that we can intake as many animals as possible and really work with the community to try to save as many of the healthy adoptable animals that were possible. Unfortunately, with the Nye County case, we knew that there were a number of them that were not going to have a positive outcome. And I believe it's in the news that there were about 170 animals, unfortunately, that had to be euthanized. And I guess what our comment would be to the community that, be aware. If you're seeing these cases, if you're seeing that an animal is not being treated well in another scenario with your neighbor, we do have animal control will respond, and you need to make them aware of it. That case went on for a long time undetected before somebody finally said something, and that would be our advice that if you see an animal being abused, again, Nevada SPCA is not an agency that responds to that, but animal control in your jurisdiction will.
In that case, when you talk about over 100 animals that are euthanized, why? What state are they in that leads to euthanization?
So I can't speak specifically to that, but I believe that our veterinary team saw a number of animals that had been starved for weeks. There were a number of animals that had medical issues that had not been treated, that unfortunately could not be cured, et cetera. So I think that there was a veterinary reason why those animals unfortunately had to be euthanized, and I believe that they've made the right decisions.
Nancy from Las Vegas, welcome to the program.
Hello.
Hi, go ahead.
So I have a question if there's any quick fix to keep a 5-year-old Malamute from jumping a 6-foot wall and escaping a backyard.
Does it do this often?
Yes.
Oh.
Constant supervision is definitely going to be key in these types of situations. Leaving our pets unattended in the backyard as you're witnessing can be a little bit dangerous. I've had dogs in the past that are extremely interested in their environments and wanting to peek over fences and corners, and, obviously constant supervision, making sure, once again, that you're available to communicate that's something that you find unacceptable. When pets are going to be in our backyard, whether it's making sure they don't want to jump, you don't want to eat rocks, you want them to urinate or defecate in a particular area. They make great 20-foot, 30-foot long line leashes to where you can let them roam around the backyard, do their business, and now you have the opportunity to communicate what you're looking for their health and safety to make sure that behavior is not going to continue. So you can be present in the backyard with them and significant feet away by using a long line.
Does that help you, Nancy?
It does, very much. Thank you so much for that suggestion.
You're welcome, and thank you for the call. Mick from Pahrump has a question. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. My German Shepherd, he's about a year and a quarter, and his claws are getting so long, and he just won't even let me touch them. I touch his claws, and he hides them under his body. I just would like a suggestion on how to trim those nails, those claws for my boy.
A very good question. Who wants that? Yeah.
If you take it slow, I mean, when I'm going to train a dog on anything new, whether it's trimming their nails, whether it's them getting used to being groomed, I try and remove those particular objects at that point in time. Is the animal very comfortable with you simply by yourself touching his paw? Can you pick up his paw and he doesn't fight you? Getting to the point where you can do those types of things when you're trimming shears or nail grinders aren't even present can be beneficial. And then getting to the point where those objects are in place of view and you slowly get them closer to the dog, pet them with the dog, do these types of things and take it very slow and make him a little bit more comfortable with it. The sink or swim mentality, in my professional opinion, doesn't work so well. We've got to build on success, and every animal responds very differently, and so we've got to take it slow. But I also have some personal animals that I don't even have to trim their nails because I can utilize hard surfaces like concrete or asphalt and play ball with my dog on those surfaces, and his nails naturally get grinded down, and I never even have to, have his nails trimmed. I have other dogs that are in my house that are, a little bit more household pets, and they don't spend an extreme amount of time on those types of surfaces. So I do need to take the time to trim their nails, but making them more comfortable through the process is extremely beneficial.
When you're doing this, is it most beneficial to have a bag of broken up bacon? So first you grab the paw, he lets you grab the paw, you give it a piece of bacon.
Yeah, it's a marking system. It definitely is. I mean, it can be beneficial, whether you're going to use a verbal reward, you're going to use some type of incentive, marking that this was good behavior is extremely important in those moments, and just taking it slow.
We have somebody who wrote in. Jessica says, my 13-year-old dog is going through this thing where she pretends she can't hear me. I'll call and she won't come. I know she's pretending because whenever I say food or ball, she runs over to me. First, am I anthropomorphizing my dog, thinking it's doing something human, like, quote, ignoring me, or do they really do that?
No, they absolutely do. Selective hearing is not just in us husbands. It exists out there in dogs as well. We're all guilty of it. So, older age, we do see it, just like in older age in some people. We get set in our ways and want to listen when we want to listen. And older dogs can absolutely go through training. I've had 14, 15-year-old dogs come through training quite often. We have to understand if there's any physical limitations involved and, be understanding of how much we can demand of the dog, but things like coming to their name, making sure they're not running out doorways, making sure they're willing to respond to the bare minimums is very realistic for all dogs.
The follow-up to that is, how can I tell if my dog is really going deaf?
Yeah, so the simplest, well, there is no simple answer to that question, because when you go to the veterinarian, they're going to look into the ears, and that'll tell the veterinarian what the anatomic health of those ears are. That does not necessarily correlate to functionality of those ears. And so beyond that, you're looking at fancier tests, 2 tests in particular, an MRI, which is only going to be provided by specialists in the majority of states in the U.S. So an MRI to look at the structures of the ear and the brain and see if there's any sort of reason why there's a functional dysfunction there. And secondarily, a test called the BAER test, BAER, which is an acronym. It's a test that tests specifically for hearing in dogs, well, brain function, I should say, but you can evaluate it for hearing. And it's under anesthesia, again, super specialized. Most facilities don't even have that kind of test, and if they do, the neurologists there are the ones that are going to perform those types of testings.
Okay, and Zachary?
And even with 100% deaf dogs, we have them come through our facility quite often. I've already had 4 this year, 100% deaf. They were born that way, every single one of them, unfortunately, and they can still extremely benefit from training. It's extremely important for these dogs even more to have an off-leash level obedience to make sure we can communicate with the dog. And that's where we implement some special training tools like remote training collars to make sure when they're in the backyard, they get to enjoy running around. You can go out on a hike at Red Rock, they get to enjoy running around, and we can communicate with them in a very humane way, what we're looking for, because they can't hear us.
I'm sure somebody's thinking about hearing aids for dogs. Is that a thing?
I have read papers that looked at similar treatment options. Usually they're used as a case study to transition to human procedures. So it's typically a stepping stone for experimental procedures in people. There are also some fairly advanced inner ear treatments that, again, performed usually really uncommonly or experimentally in dogs, but it is something you could see in the future.
We have one more question here written in. Says someone in the, actually, no, this isn't from, this is from our office. Someone in our office said cats will die of loneliness if you leave them in the house alone for a week, even with a food dispenser and clean litter. Somebody else chortled out loud. Well, how bad is it to leave a cat, which seems self-sufficient enough, alone?
Any animals left unsupervised is obviously not beneficial for any duration of time. Obviously, we have responsibilities as owners when we take these companions on. These durations of time that you're mentioning are pretty significant, and any animal left alone for that amount of time, these are animals we've domesticated, and it's obviously not ideal.
They're not just pets, as we keep saying. They are part of the family. Susan from Las Vegas has a question about cats. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you. So I have a Sphinx, and luckily I can trim his nails fine, but I've tried several different types of clippers, and I'm not able to get his nails, not to shred. And after I clip him, and then he scratches himself and, gives himself a lot of scratches. So I was wondering if you could suggest a really good clipper for cats.
Dremels are something that we see quite often used because they can remove the claw slowly, and we don't see typically as many breaks. So even after dogs' nails are typically trimmed with a clipper and a larger amount is removed, we do like to follow that up with a dremeling just to make sure that the shape is good. They're not too sharp where they're going to cut or scratch. And, often there's times when we just use a Dremel. We don't even clip because of the dog's fear, and we want to make sure that we're not going to get too close to the wick or cause any potential harm to the animal.
A Dremel, like a small sander.
Correct.
Yeah. Dr. Shadi?
Yeah, I would echo that. I also would add from the medical standpoint, it's very easy for us, and probably most likely scenario here is that the equipment needs to be changed or improved, but also don't forget the health of the nails. You want to make sure your pet is on a well-balanced maintenance diet for that species, and you also want to make sure that you're supplementing them with something like fish oil that'll help with the integrity of the skin, and the nails are part of the dermatologic system. So don't forget to try and maintain the nail health as well. Brittle nails can be a sign of this issue also.
Okay, thank you so much for that call, Susan. Holly from North Las Vegas, welcome to the program.
Of course. Hello.
Hi, go ahead.
My husband and I adopted a rescue dog about 4 months ago. He's 2 years old. He's half Italian Greyhound and half Chihuahua. And he's a great dog. The only thing that he does that we can't deal with is he licks us all the time. And we can't seem to break him of it. We tell him no, and that just seems to encourage it.
Does that mean the dog's super happy, Zach? Or what about that?
Dogs have many ways to communicate, right? We have to understand that sometimes they're trying to communicate something to us that we're not aware of. Yes, licking is a form of love and affection, when it comes to these types of animals. And after a while, of course, it becomes a little bit of a nuisance, just like anything can be in excess. So, teaching the dog some boundaries is going to be extremely beneficial. So in these moments, you might be giving a command, and that selective hearing is kicking into gear, and they don't necessarily want to listen. So if there's too much stimulation transpiring, teaching them that a little bit of timeout would be beneficial, not necessarily placing them in a room or in a crate as a punishment. Just give them a little bit of space where they're learning to lay in their bed in those moments where the behavior that they're displaying is a little bit unwanted, and we need to create some boundaries there to make it very clear that we would not like it to continue.
And Dr. Shadi, I wonder if aside from being behavioral, there could be a medical reason behind that.
Yeah, we certainly suspect it in some cases. So dogs will be compulsive lickers about lots of stuff, carpeting, rocks, your skin. But you have to wonder what's unique about your skin other than a behavioral component, a bonding experience. Your skin does have oils on it and salt, and those are minerals and vitamins that are also should be in their diets. So you wonder, does your dog have some sort of dietary deficiency and are trying to make up that difference by licking your skin? And so that's the most common reason why we as veterinarians would blame something like this on a medical reason.
And here's a question for Lori Heron. It says, are worms common with new dogs?
So I think that really varies according to, where you're adopting. If you're getting the dog from a licensed breeder, we do see a lot of parasites, unfortunately, that come into the shelter. And for example, Giardia, which is not deadly, but it's everywhere. So we see that often. So it's not unusual, especially in a shelter situation where we're intaking animals from a number of different households across the community.
We have another question about worms as well. Christophe Ralph says, my 12-week-old Maltese puppy has worms. Will he die?
If they're really severe, like a large-term worm burden in their body, then they could. But the good thing about worms is that we have many different treatment options for them, and most people address them before they get that severe. You'll see rare case reports of dogs having so many worms that it'll cause an intestinal blockage. That's insane, but it does happen. But those are thankfully rare. So if you can address the problem fairly early, make sure that if there's any signs of dehydration or any other sequela from worms, anemia, what have you, that those things are managed appropriately with your veterinarian's care.
Yeah, and Zachary.
And preventatives are key, guys. I mean, at the end of the day, we don't know where our neighbors, our communities, other animals are coming from. You know, having a facility of over 100 dogs, I see dogs every month from across the nation. I have dogs in my facility from other countries. So just because these items are not, normal in our climate here in the Vegas Valley, we are seeing new species of worms, things that can be transpired come into our facility because of these dogs that are traveling. You might have traveled recently to the mountains of Utah and brought something back here in the valley you weren't aware. Your dog could be utilizing the restroom and another dog simply smelled that feces and now they have ingested that potential worm. They don't have to necessarily even eat the feces. They could step in it, lick their own paw, and now once again they've been ingested something completely unintentionally that you weren't even aware of.
Bert has a question for Zachary. He says, my friend has a dog who barked nonstop. It got to the point where they were getting letters from neighbors in the city. They tried bark and shock collars, but no good. They ended up having the dog debarked. First, I wonder if you ever recommend debarking a dog, which is surgery on vocal cords. And Dr. Shadi, I'll ask you that question first.
Yeah, there are areas in the world that have banned that type of procedure, and I don't know anybody who does that procedure. I'm a board-certified surgeon. I've never done it, nor would I, ethically speaking. I don't think it's a solution to this problem. This is a behavior issue or an environmental issue or a combination of the two.
And Zachary, how do you train that out of a dog?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, once again, just like anything else, we have to be responsible and take time. Dogs don't just aren't turnkey. Same with our children. It takes a lot of effort. I say that dogs are even more effort. I can have communication with my children and understand why they're feeling a particular way. You can't do that with a dog. We have to communicate what we find acceptable and unacceptable, and it's going to take extreme consistency. And sometimes that consistency doesn't happen overnight. If this is behavior we've allowed for 1 year, 2 years, hypothetically, it could take a year or 2 years to completely correct and curb the behavior 100%. We hope that with training programs, and some of them much more significant, than others, that we can dramatically streamline that process, but it's going to take some time.
That's Zachary Adam Dickmeyer. He is a trainer at Club K9. Shadi Ireifej is a veterinarian, the owner of VetTriage.com. Lori Heron is executive director of the Nevada SPCA. I want to thank them and the people who called and wrote in. Your calls, your questions really make this program work.